Welcome to Connect, the California MBA's weekly podcast featuring one-on-one interviews with movers and shakers in the mortgage industry. I'm Dustin Hobbs, Communications Director here at the California MBA, and it's September, and so we're continuing our focus on conversations with folks in the commercial multifamily sector of the industry. We actually just finished up our Western States CREF Conference a week or so ago, and we'll be getting into some takeaways there with our guest today, and we'll get into that here in just a minute. But before we do, let's thank our sponsors over at Accelerate. Accelerate helps lenders close more loans through better borrower engagement. They are the mortgage industry's most innovative customer experience platform, which delivers lead management, sales enablement, engagement, a robust mortgage-specific content library, and data intelligence all in one comprehensive and highly scalable platform. Accelerate delivers dynamic technology, strategy, and content for every channel of your business to ensure engagement throughout the customer journey, whether that be with your borrowers, referral partners, or any other party to the loan transaction. The dynamic enterprise solution seamlessly fits into your existing tech stack, whether that's your phone integration, your POS, LOS, servicing, data enrichment. And that's due to the Accelerate's advanced API connectivity, modern design, and open architecture. So gone are the days of managing multiple and separate systems like your CRM, your marketing automation, lead management, and having your data trapped in those silos. The innovative platform allows you to provide your internal and external customers timely, relevant information based on data intelligence to build repeatable outcomes at each stage of the customer's journey. So bottom line, close more loans, improve borrower conversions, enhance customer retention, transform customer acquisition lifecycle, and create customers for life. So for more information, visit Accelerate.com, where you can contact them at the number listed in the description below. All right, let's get into the conversation with our guest. I'm excited to welcome in Ryan Chapman, or welcome back to the program, I should say. Ryan Chapman. Ryan is a Senior Vice President with Walker Dunlop, and he's also just been recently inaugurated as the Chairman of the Board of Directors for the California MBA. Welcome, Ryan.
Dustin, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's exciting to have you back on the program. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we just finished up our Western States CREF Conference back in person for the first time since 2019, about a week or so ago in Las Vegas at for us, the brand new venue at the Aria. And so just, right away, question for you. What's your big takeaway from the conference?
Well, Dustin, first I'd like to say it was great to see a good turnout this year. As you mentioned, it was we took last year off. We were virtual last year. It was great to be back in person. Very excited to see the number of people that showed up. Had a great time at the conference. I think we had a little over 600 folks registered for this year's conference, and it ran very well. Obviously, also at our new venue at Aria, and it worked out perfectly. A great layout, great venue, and really enjoyed the event. I think the capital's just plentiful out there. Lots of providers chasing maybe not as many deals as they'd like. We're seeing the continued strength in financing on the multifamily side and on the industrial side, and then other asset classes are starting to see a little bit more green shoots, if you will, or less headwinds in the ability to finance some of those. I think saw a lot of capital providers that maybe had a single bucket of capital or a single focus of capital have expanded that moving forward, trying to get more access to more deals, and even some groups that maybe were focused heavily and been doing a lot of multifamily are looking into placing capital in some of the other asset classes as well. So it looks to be continued strong opportunity to be a borrower, and rates are, the treasury is still low, and competition out there as spreads remaining low, you can still get in some pretty attractive financing.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, as far as just the conference itself, I think you really hit on it there. It was great to see everyone back in person. I think we found, at least on the association side, that, sometimes you have to do the events virtually, but for some sectors of the industry, I think commercial and multifamily real estate finance is certainly one of those. It's very hard to replicate the in-person networking and deal making atmosphere that you get in those in-person conferences in a virtual atmosphere. So it was really good to see everyone. And I think people enjoyed the new venue. We were at the Wynn Encore for several years before, and great venue there as well. But I think the new fresh digs at Aria were really good. And looking forward to next year. And,
yeah,
oh, go ahead.
I kind of, just add on that. I mentioned to people when I spoke, despite the fact, technology is an important part of our business, and we'll continue to expand in how we employ technology, but we are still rooted in personal connection. And so the ability to be in person is very beneficial, whether it's a networking event, a conference, or in meetings with clients and prospects. It's still very important to be in person.
Yeah, totally agree. And I mean, if you missed the conference this year, or even if you were there and already looking forward to next year, the conference dates for next year to mark on your calendar are September 7th through the 9th, and we're going to be back at the Aria in Las Vegas. So more information to come on that here in the next few months. Switching gears a little bit, Ryan. So how have you guys at Walker Dunlop begun to transition back to work, or back to face-to-face meetings? And do you anticipate the sort of hybrid or the work from home model will continue to stay with us as business and governments contend with the new variants of COVID, or do you think we'll sort of eventually get back to a all in-person environment again?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think a lot of companies are continually looking at that, changing how they're addressing it, and the market and timing will tell. I mean, in short answer, I'd say I think the hybrid model is here to stay for a while. I don't know if it's permanent, but there's a lot of factors at play there. We here at Walker and Dunlop, we started getting out in front of clients and prospects and taking in-person meetings to the extent that we could. Late last year and through this year, certainly. As far as back in the office, we've shifted our go back date. We originally we started allowing people to come back in certain offices in certain markets, but with restrictions and social distancing and wearing masks in either in your offices or in common areas or in conference rooms when you're with others. As well as requiring temperature checks and daily survey kind of check-ins. We intended to bring everybody back in early September, and we pushed that out a little bit. As you can see, I'm in the office today. We're bringing people back in as they feel comfortable. We have adopted the idea or the concept of those that are vaccinated can have unfettered access to the office, but we are still, fluxing based on what's happening out there. Right now, we're wearing masks when we're in our common areas around other associates, but when we're in our own offices, we don't have to be masked up. And I think a lot of companies are experiencing the same. Certainly the freeways are getting more congested out there. So anecdotally, I could say it seems like everybody's coming back to work, but at the same time, we're in the office buildings and in the towers, and the parking lots aren't that full. So people are out and about and wanting to get back to level of normalcy, but I wouldn't say we're there yet. And going forward, it's we feel it's important to be in person. I mentioned that from the networking concept and the idea of the conference in person. We think that getting everyone back in the office, being able to collaborate, to mentor, to train. A company like ours, we've had, I believe, 200 plus employees hired since the beginning of the pandemic. Until recently, many of them had never set foot inside of a Walker and Dunlop office. And so it's important to us to get everybody together when we can.
Yeah, I have to imagine, especially with the new employees, just inculcating that the culture that you guys have at the company, that's got to be difficult to do strictly over a Zoom call. Eventually, you want to see them in person and shake hands and kind of get that belly to belly feel at least.
Sure, you can't there are certain things you can't grasp. On video, maybe better than on the phone, because you're able to see some expressions and see, body language and how people are reacting to a conversation. But in person still was preferred, and I think better long term.
Yeah, no, I agree. So looking at the market itself, what's your sort of take on the outlook heading into, as we sort of cruise into Q4 here, and looking ahead maybe even to 2022? What's from your perspective, what'll be some hot markets or property types? What's your sense?
Well, I mean, part of that can kind of go in the conversation of the shifting dynamics of the markets and return to the cities, or are we going suburban? And so you see there's uncertainty there as to how some markets are going to fare. So if you're looking at housing, are the big cities going to bring people back? It appears they are. The rents are moving up and occupancies are returning to big city markets, but you've got also a fair amount of shift in demand of people wanting to be a little bit more flexible in their environment. If we truly maintain a hybrid work schedule, there's a point at which maybe it's okay that I'm not as close. I think the concern there long term is, even if you have to go into the office once a week or twice a week, comes a point at which the commute is too far anyway. And so to say I'm okay with a hour commute, is that fine? But if it's 2 or 3 hours, that just isn't going to make sense in that hybrid model. So we're looking at those kinds of factors when we're thinking about where the demand's going to be for residential living, where the demand's going to be for office space. Some companies are going to demand to still be in the major markets and in the business centers. It's important for them to be there. So I think there's a lot of look at how that's all going to play out. As far as product sectors, multifamily, and as I mentioned earlier, and most people who listen to this will attest and know, multifamily and industrial have been the darlings of the industry. Multifamily for a significant amount of time, and industrial certainly over the last few years. There are opportunities in other sectors as well, and might be ample time now to be in those product types. In hospitality, we're seeing travel is up, business travel is some level returning. That was a comment that was talked about last week in our keynote luncheon with our CEO Willie Walker interviewed the CEO and MGM president and CEO of MGM Resorts, that their overall occupancy and overall RevPAR in Las Vegas on the Strip hotels that MGM controls was great in the month of August, but it's all driven primarily by their weekend travel. The business and the conference travel, while there is some, it just hasn't picked up to a level that is significant enough yet to really drive the RevPAR midweek, that Monday night through Wednesday night, or Monday night through Thursday night.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. I mean, just from the association perspective, it's really hard. And I mean, when you have to plan these conferences out months, and even at times when you're booking hotel contracts years in advance, it's really hard to judge right now whether or not you're going to be able to have a conference in person at all, or whether you can do it with masks, or whether you can do it some other way, and and the restrictions seem to be changing sort of all the time. I mean, I know just for the MBA's national convention, which is coming up here in October, they have had to change gears a couple of times and kind of stay light on their feet. So I have to imagine that until there becomes some more a way to game out some of these scenarios long term, it's going to be tough for some of these associations to really make that financial commitment to have an in-person conference. And and sort of build back up that midweek occupancy at some of these Vegas hotels.
Well, there's one thing the pandemic has taught us, and there certainly are more than one thing. It's be flexible. Things will change, and they might change quickly, and you've got to be ready to pivot with them.
Yeah, no, and I think you make an interesting point too about the urban and suburban shifts, and the fact that there's still still companies that want to have their headquarters in financial centers. And so I think when you can get caught up in reading news or watching cable news and kind of think that everything's changing, everything is going to be different, and the fundamentals of some of these markets and how the financial sector works, a lot of that is it's still there. Not everything has changed quite yet. And I think that's a good perspective to add in there. So thank you for mentioning that. So switching gears again to talk a little bit about policy now. I'm curious how the federal, state, and maybe even local eviction moratoria that we've seen over the last year or so, how are these impacting from the commercial perspective? How are these impacting property values or deal volume, and even looking forward, if they stay in place or if new ones come in place, how does that impact the market?
Yeah, well, I think you say commercial, but there's kind of commercial office, industrial, retail, and there's commercial for the multifamily space. And I think the eviction moratoria really more is on the residential side of that. And by and large, lenders and borrowers have done everything they can to work. Lenders working with their borrowers and borrowers working with their tenants, whether they're commercial tenants or residential tenants, through the tough time here in the pandemic. I think there's been a lot of financial support that has come along with a lot of that eviction moratoria. So I think that has helped, backstop, potential, erosion of cash flows, if you will, at many of these properties. If the eviction moratoria wears off and stimulus is less available, I think you might see a little bit more stress in the marketplace. I think landlords looking to maximize the revenue, but they're also looking to maintain their tenancies and keep their tenants in place. So I think that somewhat remains to be seen how this all plays out. But with jobs returning, we haven't hired back all the jobs that were lost around the country through the pandemic. So there's still a lot more room to grow there. But I'm hopeful that we can get back to a high level of employment where people are earning incomes that are sufficient to be able to support their rents and get their businesses back up and going.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk for a minute here about some inside baseball about the California MBA. I mentioned at the outset of the program that you've just recently been inaugurated as chair of the California MBA, and you've been on the board for a number of years, been involved with the association for a number of years. And so sort of looking ahead to your term as chair, what if I'm a member of the California MBA or a potential member of the California MBA, and I'm curious, what are some of your priorities as chair for the year ahead?
Sure. Well, the organization's been running strong for a number of years. We've got a great leadership in both the staff at the California MBA, including yourself, Dustin, as well as the board members that are active and participating in leading the organization. We've got a number of initiatives that we've started and are continuing to work through. One that I'd like to see continue to be successful is our Future Leaders Program. I think that it's important for us to invest in the future of our industry, to promote those that are up and comers and that are showing real promise and poise to the better opportunities within their own companies, within their careers. And the program has expanded over the last few years, and it's a lot actually due to your hard work, Dustin. And so I'd like to see that program continue to excel. The other thing that's really important is continuation of our advocacy efforts. Every year the legislature in California and at the federal level as well is constantly writing new legislation and new laws. And what's often misunderstood is that while the people in the legislatures are very adept at what they do and very smart people, they don't know all and everything. And so I think it's important for all stakeholders that are going to be affected by any legislation to be able to have a voice at the Capitol, to be able to provide information about what the effect of this legislation or that legislation will have on our industry.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, I think you make a great point there about education when it comes to our lobbying efforts. I think far too often on both sides of the aisle politically, we tend to make caricatures out of the legislators, and whether that's that they are these amazingly smart and capable, and like you said, it's inaccurate to assume that they know everything about everything. But what comes with that authority sometimes is sort of that presumption that you do know everything about everything, and and then on the other hand, sometimes we think that they always have evil intent or pernicious intent, and a lot of the time, I think to your point, it's just a lack of education. So when we or the other any other trade group goes in there and sort of explains to them, as you mentioned, this is what the actual on the ground effect of your legislation. Oftentimes it's not a combative relationship, it's a collaborative one of, oh, okay, well, that's not what I intended to do, so help me change this legislation so we can still accomplish our goal without harming the market or making things more onerous than they have to be. So I think you make a great point there. So you mentioned the Future Leaders Program, and I kind of wanted to dig into this for a second. I mean, your involvement with the California MBA does go back all the way to your time as one of the, I think, original future leaders in our program when we first got it off the ground. So I know that you are really, maybe more than anybody else in the association, really invested in the success of the program and really have seen the benefits of it. So to that point, how important is it for companies and organizations like the California MBA and Walker Dunlop to foster these opportunities for younger folks to get plugged into the industry?
Well, first of all, let me say I wish I was in the Future Leaders Program today versus the one I was in the first year that it got started. It was a great program when I was there as well, but the focus of the time that I was there was attending the conferences and being on the commercial side. We have one major conference every year, and then I also consider Legislative Day an important component of the commercial and residential side. But the rest of the events were residential focused, so I was a bit of a deer in the headlights attending those conferences. But today's Future Leader Program, in addition to the exposure to the conferences and the leadership and the networking, you've got the added component of the partnership that we have with Pepperdine University. And the education program that goes along with that. So I think it's really been a boon and great growth in that program. As far as investing in the future of our industry and in our employees that are newer and getting exposure, it's critically important. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of industries out there. Ideally for any company in our industry, you invest a fair amount of time in onboarding and in training and mentoring employees, and you want them to stay with your firm and or within the industry. And the Future Leaders Program is a great way to do that. We get folks that get grand exposure to other aspects of what goes on in the industry. I mean, we are the California Mortgage Bankers Association, but even within the finance side, there's a lot of different components that happen throughout the process of originating a loan, servicing a loan, and the ancillary businesses that go into making finance work, and the exposure both in education as well as networking that comes through programs like the Future Leaders Program is really helpful to those employees that you're trying to foster up through your organization.
Yeah, and thank you for the mention there. I think that I think you're dead on. And if you're watching this and you're interested in our Future Leaders Program, we'll be opening up applications here in about another month for the 2022 year. You can find that information at our website, or just keep your eyes out. We'll be starting to promote that here later this year. Last question here, Ryan, as we start to wrap up here. I'm curious, as someone who's been a part of the association for a long time, and if you assume for a second you're going to be speaking to a potential member, what would you say over the years has been maybe you've noticed as one of maybe the biggest misperceptions you've had about the California MBA before you got involved?
Yeah, I go back to some of my earlier comments about advocacy and legislation. I think that even myself, when I came in the first time I attended the legislative day, I was really like, I don't know what we're going to be talking about here, because it seems like everything is very residential focused in the way that the bills are, because a lot of bills that are pushed through the state legislature are consumer centric, consumer focused, and so they often will be more applicable on the residential side of the business than the commercial side of the business. And I think that a lot of other folks have a misconception that that's true throughout. What I have found is there clearly are components of legislation that are directly affecting commercial real estate. We talked about a few of these at the conference this week, and one comes up quite often is the split roll tax, and then there's the eviction moratorium, which affected the multifamily space, and there was even legislation that was talking about commercial lease, eviction moratoriums, or ability for commercial tenants to negate their leases in one fashion or another. So that was definitely a direct effect. And the other one is just that a lot of these legislation, as they are written, they're very broad and very all-encompassing. And so it takes kind of drilling through them and kind of understanding and going up in front of the legislators, whether through the lobbyists or directly ourselves, and saying, what you have written here, if your intent is to be focused on the residential side, that's fine. But the way it's written, it's crossing across lines to affect on the commercial side too. And is that in the intent? If so, what is the expectation? And here's our belief on what the consequences, intended or unintended, may be out of that legislation affecting both the commercial and the residential side.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point to make, and I think you're totally right that is something that I've even found fascinating over the years is how often legislators just don't realize, because the financial markets can be so complex, and when they talk about consumers or borrowers, those terms in their mind may mean something very specific, but when it comes to the law and how it's applied, that can mean a number of different things, and something that they may not intend to cover at all. So thank you for pointing that out. Well, we're about out of time here, so I wanted to say thank you, Ryan, for joining us on Connect. It was great to see you again at the conference last week, and here again on Connect, and we'll certainly check in with you over this next year.
Well, Dustin, I really appreciate the time, and thank you as well. I wish everyone a great end of third quarter and roll into fourth quarter and make it a successful 2021 and roll that straight into 2022. Thank you.
Absolutely. And if you enjoyed the conversation here, make sure and subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. You can also find us on SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. And we'll be back again next Monday for another episode of Connect. We'll see you then.